Hey everybody, Nigel here from thegroundfloormusician.com, and I just wanted to go over a concept in a little more detail today that I introduced a little while ago, and that's using a high-pass filter. This is one of the most basic and fundamental things you can learn when mixing, and it's one of the most powerful and simple tools, I should say, that are available to you. So I just wanted to, now that I've written about it, kind of give you a more hands-on look at what a high-pass filter is and really what it does and how it can sort of clean things up when you're working on a song. So I've got in front of me here a song that I've been working on for a little while, and it's got most of the standard things in it. You know, we've got a vocal track up here that I've just muted for convenience. We've got a kick drum, we've got some bass happening, we've got like a little Latin tambourine, some stomps, and then we've got our acoustic guitars in here that are kind of doing most of the melodic work. All right, so what I'm going to do is just let you listen to what's happening, before we touch anything, and just show you where we're at, kind of. These tracks haven't really been touched at all. They're mostly, more or less, the raw files, and they haven't really been mixed at all. There's some basic level stuff happening here where I played with the faders a bit just to get things to sit properly. But beyond that, I don't really think anything's been touched. So let's take a listen. Okay, so you get the idea there. It's not that it sounds bad or anything. It's just that when we get a whole bunch of instruments playing together like this, what we have happening is that naturally some of the frequency ranges of our instruments are going to overlap, and that creates mud. Really, I mean, that's not really a technical term or anything like that, but it's just kind of the way things sound. They could sound clearer. Everything kind of feels like it's overlapping, and that's because, in some sense, some instruments are taking away space from other ones. All right, so we're going to look at specifically the chorus acoustic guitars in here. So let's just listen to what they sound like on their own right now. Here you go. So they don't sound bad or anything like that. They sound nice and full, pretty much the way that I wanted them to sound. It's just that they don't necessarily play as nice as they could with the other instruments. So what I'm going to do is pull up on this aux track that I've sent both of these to. I'm going to pull up an EQ plugin. All right. So depending on what software you're using, it's going to be in a different place. I'm using Logic right now, and what I'm going to do is grab the channel EQ. It's a 7-band EQ, I believe. So it may be called that within your DAW, something different. Just know that you're looking for a channel EQ. I could use a single band EQ because all I really want is the high pass filter. But I'm going to pull up a channel EQ just so you can see more or less what I'm doing. It's a little bit more visual, and I think that might be helpful. So I'm going to pull that up, and what you're going to notice is that I have control over a whole bunch of bands. All right? I don't really care about any of that right now. So let me just turn all these off. Right? What I want, and you'll notice this particular curve here, what it's doing, and I can adjust the severity of this, but essentially what it's doing is carving off everything below a certain frequency. And that's really all a high-pass filter is. It lets the highs through, it lets the highs pass, and it takes care of some of that low-level noise that we really, really don't need in our tracks. It's not that we want the low end completely gone from our song. It's just that that's really, we can leave that more for the kick and for the bass. Things that actually sound good in that frequency range and things that we actually want to hear. Whereas the guitars, we're looking for more of a mid-rangey sound, or at least I am in this case. So what I'm going to do is just play back, and I'm going to tweak around with it for a second. And you're going to see I'm going to go pretty severe with it. And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about when I'm carving off the low end. So you see what I'm talking about there, right? I've made them sound really tinny, and that's not what I want. But just for the sake of showing you what the high pass filter actually sounds like, you'll see that it does let the highs pass. So what I've got now is just most of the stuff from 500 and above is passing, and all this stuff is being taken out. Obviously, that's not pleasing at all. So what we're going to do, and a really important thing to do here, is to listen to the guitars in context. Because what sounds good soloed does not necessarily sound good with everything else. And that's really the core of what we're getting at here. So let me get everything else going back here again. And now we're going to play around with the high pass filter on these guitars. All right. So what you'll notice there is that the guitars really don't sound all that different. And that's okay. The change is going to be very subtle. That we don't want a huge different change like how I was sweeping up to 500 hertz here. We don't want that. What we want is a very, very subtle difference that'll help the guitars stand out just a little bit while not eating up the headroom of those lower frequency instruments. So what I'm going to do is play it again, and then I'll bypass it, and then try to listen to see if you can hear the very, very subtle difference between the guitars before the high pass filter and the guitars afterwards. So a good strategy when using a high pass filter is to actually kind of come up to the point where you can almost hear the high pass filter working, where it's almost starting to affect the sound there, and then just dial it back a little bit. And that way you can ensure that you're not really affecting anything that you really want to hear, because I don't want to take the fullness of the guitars away. And if you listen to them in solo again, you'll see that so I may have even taken out a little bit too much. So let me just move that back down again. So you notice they don't sound amazing in solo mode anymore, but I'm not trying to keep the whole body of the instrument in there. What I'm trying to do is get them to sound nice with everything else, right? So it's not a huge difference between the way they sound. You'll notice some of that kind of low level, it's almost like a hum, really. Some of that low level sustain is gone, and that's kind of opened up room for all the other elements in here. So if you listen back to it now, so you'll notice that now the guitars kind of have their own space, and it's letting a little bit more of the bass through and a little bit more of the kick, which is what we want in that range. So it's not that we're really not doing that much to it, right? All we've done is take away some of that stuff that we don't need, and by that, everything's sort of cleared up a bit. And what you do is you'd apply this same technique to all the instruments. Obviously less so to the bass and the kick, but even with those, you'll often find there's a slim bit of that low end that's just almost inaudible and not helpful for anything that we can just kind of take out. All right? So I hope that helps you, and again, it's one of the most powerful tools that you'll be able to use right off the bat to make things sound clearer and more present in a mix, while taking out just some of that mud that you really don't need. All right, so try it out for yourself and see what kind of results you can get. All right, take care.